Welcome students to another day in the Foods Lab. Today we're going to be doing something just a little bit more fun, I think. And in the process of taking and doing this particular lab, which is donut holes, we're going to learn about two different cooking terms that maybe not, you've worked or heard of before. This first one is cut in. That one is probably the most unique. Maybe you haven't heard of that one. Knead, I'm hoping maybe you have, but maybe you've never done it before. Today we're going to be doing both. So pay attention as we do them today so that when you do your donut holes tomorrow, everything will be good. I'm going to put these to the side for right now. Previous to my filming, I have gone ahead and read over my recipe. It makes sense to me. I have assembled all of my ingredients and I've assembled all of my equipment. So basically I can stand just right here and do my whole thing, saving time and energy. I have also previously washed my hands, and since we are going to be cooking, I'm not too worried about taking and wearing gloves today. I am going to go ahead then and just get started. The first thing it says is that we're going to be working with a large mixing bowl. So I'm going to pull out my large mixing bowl, and in this I'm going to add first off some flour. The flour that we're going to be using is called an all-purpose flour. You probably just know it as white flour. And we know how to correctly measure by first kind of fluffing that up with a spoon and then gently placing the flour into the measuring cup and having it overflowing, after which we're going to use our straight edge metal spatula and karate chop off that top. Go ahead and pop that in here, place my flour to the side. I'll be coming back and using that later. I'm also going to be adding a little bit of sugar, 1.5 tablespoons. You have both the 1 tablespoon measuring spoon, which you have overflowing, none of that lazy measuring that maybe some of you have developed bad habits with. And then I'm also going to be measuring out 1/2 tablespoon, so 1.5 tablespoons total. Make sure you're looking on your measuring spoons to make sure that you have the right measuring spoon. After that, I'm going to be adding in a little bit of a leavening agent. This one is baking powder. When you pull this out of the cover, don't just stop at the word baking, because do you know there's another ingredient that starts with baking as well? Do you know what it is? Did you say baking soda? It's correct. And though they are cousins to one another, they are not the same and they cannot be used interchangeably. It says that I need to have 1/2 tablespoon of this baking powder, and this one happens to have a leveling edge right in here. So I'll reach inside here, looks like I'm getting kind of low, and then using the straight edge that's provided, I can just scrape that off and pop that in here. We're making a quick bread whenever we use baking powder and baking soda. And it also says that I need to have 1/2 teaspoon of salt. The salt is a universally used ingredient, and of course its function is to make things taste better. You might say, what? Not salty? It's true. These donut holes and most things that we add them into don't take and taste salty, but they do increase the flavor, natural sweetness and flavors in food. We'll go ahead and pop that in. So we have done steps 1, 2, and 3. Step number 2 says to cut in the butter. The butter's kind of chilled. It's coming right straight from my refrigerator. It's going to make the cutting in process better. And the whole point on this step is I've got to mix that butter with that flour. What would happen if I were to take and put an electric mixer into that? Can you visualize that? Yeah, it would be a mess all over. So we're going to do some cutting in. We're going to use a pastry blender, or we could use 2 knives. If I use 2 knives, I just take, and if you don't have a pastry blender at home and want to do this, I'm just going to cut my butter up. And this is originally why it was called cut in, is because we just take and cut. But it's a little time consuming and it's not as efficient as taking and using a pastry blender. The pastry blender has like 5 knives going at the same time. And I'm just going to go ahead and push that down on top of the butter. When the butter falls over, it gets coated in the flour. And when it gets coated in the flour, it doesn't want to stick to the rest of the butter. And I'm going to do this, it says, until the butter is cut into small enough pieces that it just looks like coarse crumbs. Okay, so just keeps cutting in and cutting in and cutting in. Cutting in and cutting in and cutting in until you don't really see the butter much at all. And that is called cutting in. I'm going to scrape this off my pastry blender one last time, and then I'm going to do it one more time. Okay, perfect. All right, let's go ahead now, and the next thing we're going to do is add some milk. The milk says we need to have 1/4 cup plus 2 tablespoons. So using my liquid measuring cup, you know that you're supposed to use liquid measuring cups when you measure liquids. If you want to be accurate and 100% perfect, I'm going to measure that to the 1/4 cup line. And then I need to add an additional 2 tablespoons. So let's go ahead and measure this not over the top, because if I spill more, it would defeat. If I measure it over the top of my liquid measuring cup, that kind of defeats the purpose. Also, one of the problems I found with beginning cooks is oftentimes they'll use the right size, but they're not filling it all the way to the brim with those liquid measurements. It should be so full that you're uncomfortable moving. You could maybe see me shaking just a little bit there as I was going to the side. All right, so it says we're just going to take this and add this right on in here, and it doesn't say anything about an electric mixer or beating. It just says combining it, and combining is usually a stirring method that is more gentle. All right, so I'm just going to go around here until that mixture all comes together. All right, once it's come all together, then it says we're going to transfer it to a well-floured surface. And the well-floured surface that I have here at school is your countertop. So I'll take this countertop right here, and I'm going to take a spoon, and I'm just going to put some flour on the top. I'm also going to put some onto my hands, because they are going to become involved with this kneading process. Scrape out your bowl, getting all of that dough onto that flour, but it's not a ton, not a ton. It says well floured, but that just means that you got plenty of flour on the countertop, and it's always better to add more as needed than it is to try to do, it's worse to try to get extra flour off. So I'm going to go ahead and scrape this off of my spoon right here, and then I'm going to go to town. All right, when you knead, you're going to be using the heel of your hand. All right, so make sure there's flour on it, and you're going to push it. You're going to rotate it, fold it, push it. Rotate, fold, push. Now, what you're going to find is that the longer you knead this, the tougher the bread's going to become, and that's because of a substance called gluten. You've probably heard about it in the news. Sometimes people are allergic to gluten, so it makes their stomachs really upset. But gluten also becomes stretchy and elastic. Can you see how much more smooth this is right now as you work it? I think you should probably only knead it about 10 to 15 times. And again, each time I'm rotating, folding, pushing, rotate, fold, push. That's all about taking and kneading. Now the next thing is that it says that I want to take and divide this into 12 donut holes. I know I want to do 12 because it says on my recipe that's what the yield is. So the way that I want you to do this, because getting 12 is kind of tough, what I want you to do is maybe get this into a little bit of a log. This should seem familiar. We did this before maybe. And then I'm going to take this log and I'm going to break it in half. That means this makes 6 and this makes 6. All right, so this is 6. What? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to break this in half. And then I'm going to break this in half. And then I'm going to break, oops, I was supposed to break that in thirds. Break this in thirds. Sorry. Break this in thirds. So they're all kind of the same. I know how to do my math. That was scary, huh? Just take and rip it in half. It's going to be easier if you try to do it like this than just all of a sudden shoot into the dark and try to get 12. So again, I'm going to take this log right here. This is supposed to make 6. Kind of get it a little bit. And when I think I have it, then I'm going to divide that in half. Make that a little bit of a log. And a little bit of flour on that. Not too much. I don't like a ton of flour because I don't want to eat straight flour. And again, and then finally, down here, I'm going to get that last little donut hole. Now they don't look really pretty, so I would take a second and roll them into a circle. All right, you can just do that on the countertop. You have a ton of flour, maybe you want to go into your hands. That makes you a little bit more comfortable. Looks like I can maybe do, oops, I already did that one, a little bit speedy. And if you see one that's super big compared to the others, of course this would be the point where you would take and make some adjustments. If you have too much flour on your dough, at this point, these will not come together into that little bouncy ball shape. All right, so that's another reason not to put too much flour on the countertop. Sometimes people get super excited to put flour on the countertop and then all they can taste with their product is flour. All right, so roll this around until they all are looking pretty good. I want to do this one more time. Okay, there I have my 12 donut holes, soon to be donut holes. Now step number 6 says to fill a medium-sized saucepan, which is this fellow right here, with about 2 inches of oil. Here in school, I will have already done that for you. The oil will already be in there ready to go. Then it says that while that's heating to 350 degrees, and that's a medium temperature, so I've got that going right here. I'm going to keep an eye on it. So I'm just going to kind of look ahead right now and see where we're at. So this is a candy thermometer or a deep fat thermometer. It has a little thing on the back side that we like to use. This will clamp onto the side of your pan so that it stays out of the way and yet in there. And somebody in your group has to be able to read this, see this little red line. If you can't, call me over and I'll help you look. I like these candy thermometers or these thermometers because they have a base on them that keeps the bottom of the thermometer away from actually touching the bottom of the pan. But there are other thermometers that are maybe slightly more available and affordable, and it's this little guy right here. Maybe you've seen one like this around. These only are like $1, well, maybe $2 or $3 at your grocery store. All right, so I'm going to take this right now and I'm going to put this clip on the back side of my pan and I'm going to see what my temperature is. And while we're doing that, I'm going to give a little quick wash to my hands. It's going up. It says that it's about 100. It's moving up to 150. It's coming up. And while that's working, I can see that I'm not quite there yet. I'm going to go ahead and be mixing together my cinnamon sugar. So the cinnamon sugar is going to, according to your instructions right up here, I need to have 3 tablespoons of cinnamon sugar. So I'm going to grab my 1, and then I'm going to, of course, level it off with the straight edge of my metal spatula. I've got my 1 tablespoon. Let's get this in here. There's 1 tablespoon. Here's 2 tablespoons. Here's 3 tablespoons. And then I'm going to go ahead and put in some cinnamon sugar. Now, when I go to find my 3/4 teaspoon, I do not have a 3/4 teaspoon measuring spoon. So what do? I have a 1/4, I have a 1/2, and I have a 1. If you said you can measure 1/4 3 times, because 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 equals 3/4, you're correct. If you said measure your 1/2 and your 1/4, you are also correct, because 1/2 a teaspoon is 2 1/4. When I measure my cinnamon, this is found in your kitchen. There is a little spoon right here that maybe you can see on there that I'm going to go ahead and use that section because it has a straight edge that I can go ahead and level off with. And I'm just going to go 1/4 3 times. So here we go. Here, having overflowing, and pop that in. Overflowing, and overflowing. Pop that in there, and we're good. All right, I'm gonna just take my measuring spoon. I can use any spoon I want right here, I guess, and mix these two together until I can't tell the difference between the sugar and the cinnamon. Okay, all right. Now we're just waiting for our oil to heat up. So I'm gonna wait till that gets to 350 degrees before I start cooking. If I put my donut holes in my oil right now, yes, they will go ahead and cook, but while they're cooking, they're gonna suck in all of this oil and we'll just have a grease-sogged donut hole, which we don't want. If our oil gets too hot, what's gonna happen is they're going to be super cooked on the outside, but on the inside they'll still be doughy. So it's kind of a balance between how we get this done. So I'm gonna go ahead and wait till this is at 350 and then we'll carry on.